Highway work during the day involves coordination, visibility, and backup systems. At night, those things still exist, but they compress. A decision that might take several minutes during daylight has to happen in under 10 seconds once the sun goes down. Night crews, road repair workers, traffic control operators, emergency responders, don't operate on instinct alone. They use a form of compressed logic that's built from repetition, environmental cues, and outcomes they've already seen play out dozens of times. This isn't about being fearless or reckless. It's about recognizing patterns fast enough to act while conditions are still manageable. The question isn't whether risk exists at night. It always does. The question is, how do people working in total darkness, with limited backup and narrow windows of time, decide what's safe enough to proceed with and what isn't? That's not a skill you learn from a manual. Night highway work happens in a specific kind of environment. There's ambient light from equipment, sometimes from passing vehicles, but mostly from portable flood lamps that create harsh pools of brightness surrounded by deeper darkness. Your depth perception changes. Distances feel compressed or stretched depending on where you're standing relative to the lights. Traffic patterns thin out, but the vehicles that do pass are often moving faster. Drivers at 2 a.m. are either exhausted, in a hurry, or distracted. They're not expecting to encounter a work zone, even with cones and signs placed a quarter-mile back. Reaction times are slower on both sides. Crew members wear reflective vests, but visibility is asymmetric. They can see headlights approaching from far away. Drivers often can't see workers until they're much closer. That imbalance shapes how night crews position themselves and when they move. Communication happens differently. During the day, you might call someone over, gesture, or wait for confirmation. At night, crews rely more on preset positions and timing. Everyone knows where they're supposed to be and when. If someone isn't where they should be, that's the signal something's wrong. Silence becomes a form of communication. Routine drives most of the work. Setting up a lane closure at night follows the same sequence every time. Place the first sign, measure the spacing, drop the cones in order, position the attenuator truck, confirm the taper, then open the lane. The repetition isn't about boredom. It's about reducing variables. If the setup is identical each time, deviations become obvious immediately. Fatigue is constant but unevenly distributed. The first 2 hours of a night shift feel sharp. The middle stretch, usually between 1 and 4 a.m., is where focus dips. Crews schedule the highest-risk tasks outside that window when possible. If something requires tight coordination or quick reflexes, it happens earlier or later. Weather compounds everything. Rain reduces visibility and increases stopping distances. Fog makes it nearly impossible to judge how far away headlights are. Cold slows down physical movement and makes materials harder to work with. Crews don't stop working in bad weather. They adjust the timing and sequence of tasks to match what the conditions allow. Risk assessment at night doesn't follow a checklist. It happens in layers, sometimes simultaneously. First layer, environmental scan. Before doing anything, crew members assess what's moving, what's stationary, and what's about to change. This includes traffic speed, the position of equipment, the distance to the nearest exit point, and how much working space exists between the crew and active lanes. This scan takes about 3 seconds. Second layer, timing windows. Many tasks can only happen when there's a gap in traffic. Workers learn to estimate those gaps without staring at headlights. They listen to the sound of engines, watch the rhythm of passing vehicles, and feel the pauses. A 10-second gap might be enough to reposition a cone. A 30-second gap allows someone to move equipment. If the gap estimate is wrong, there's no time to correct it mid-action. Third layer, cost of waiting. Delaying a task often creates more risk than proceeding. If a crew waits too long to remove a damaged cone, another vehicle might hit it and send debris into the work zone. If they hesitate to close a lane, traffic will continue funneling into an area that's about to become unsafe. Night work operates on narrow margins. Waiting for perfect conditions usually means those conditions never arrive. What gets prioritized? Crew position over equipment, lane integrity over cosmetic setup, and containment over cleanup. If something goes wrong, the first move is always to get people out of the active lane. Equipment can be replaced. A collapsed cone line can be fixed. A person in the wrong spot can't be. What gets ignored? Minor inefficiencies, non-critical damage, and complaints from drivers. A cone slightly out of alignment won't cause a problem. A cracked sign that's still reflective can wait until morning. Honking or yelling from passing vehicles is irrelevant unless it signals an actual hazard. Hesitation is expensive because it breaks rhythm. Crews move in coordinated sequences. If one person pauses unexpectedly, everyone downstream has to adjust. That adjustment takes time, and time means more exposure to moving traffic. The instinct to double-check everything is trained out over time. You check once, decide, and execute. There's a specific type of decision that happens when something is already going wrong. A vehicle drifts into the work zone. A piece of equipment tips over. A crew member stumbles. In those moments, night workers don't troubleshoot. They default to the fastest exit. Get out of the lane. Move behind the truck. Step toward the shoulder. The analysis of what went wrong happens afterward, never during. Experience changes how people read situations. A newer crew member might see a car swerving and assume the driver is distracted. Someone with more time on night shift recognizes that swerve as a sign the driver just noticed the work zone and is overcorrecting. That distinction changes the response. The first interpretation suggests unpredictability. The second suggests the driver is already adjusting and will likely stabilize. Certain rules exist in night road work that no supervisor writes down and no training module covers. Rule: never trust a gap until you've confirmed it twice. Headlights in the distance can close faster than they appear to. Crews learn to glance, count, glance again, then move. Single checks create mistakes. Rule: position yourself so you can always see what's coming. If you're facing away from traffic, even for a few seconds, someone else needs to be watching for you. This doesn't get discussed. It just happens. Crews self-organize around mutual visibility. Rule: if you're unsure whether you have enough time, you don't. That hesitation is information. The moment you question whether a gap is wide enough or a task can be completed before the next vehicle arrives, the answer is no. Move to the next gap. Rule: equipment placement is a signal. If a truck is angled a certain way, it means the crew is working behind it. If cones are staggered, it means the lane is closing progressively, not all at once. Other crews and experienced drivers read these signals without needing signs or radios. Rule: silence means proceed, voices mean stop. If someone shouts, everything halts immediately. It doesn't matter what they're saying. The shout itself is the warning. Crews don't wait for explanations. They react to the break in silence. Rule: never walk backward in a live lane. Turning your back to traffic removes your ability to see what's approaching. If you need to move in reverse, you sidestep or reposition entirely. Backward movement is reserved for areas completely separated from active lanes. These rules come from repeated exposure to near misses and successful avoidances. They're not about being overly cautious. They're about eliminating the variables that have previously caused problems. Once a pattern proves itself unreliable, it gets replaced with something more predictable. When night crews follow these compressed decision patterns, the work proceeds in steady intervals. Lanes close on schedule. Equipment gets positioned without incident. Tasks finish within the expected time frame. The lack of drama is the indicator of success. When routines are ignored, either through inexperience, fatigue, or overconfidence, the consequences show up as positional errors. Someone ends up in a lane longer than they intended. A piece of equipment gets placed too close to moving traffic. A gap gets misread and forces an abrupt retreat. These aren't catastrophic failures in most cases. They're inefficiencies that compound. A crew that has to reposition 3 times takes longer to complete the same task. Longer exposure means more opportunities for something to go wrong. The work still gets done, but the margins shrink. Efficiency improves when decision-making becomes automatic. Experienced crews move through tasks without internal debate. They've already evaluated the standard risks hundreds of times. What looks like instinct is actually pattern recognition applied at high speed. Safety outcomes correlate with routine adherence, not caution. Overcautious crews hesitate at the wrong moments and create confusion. Reckless crews ignore obvious signals and force emergency reactions. The middle ground, fast decisions based on repeatable logic, produces the most consistent results. Night highway work compresses risk assessment into seconds because the environment doesn't allow for extended deliberation. Darkness, limited visibility, and moving traffic create conditions where waiting for certainty guarantees problems. The logic that develops isn't about ignoring danger. It's about recognizing which risks are manageable within the available time and which ones require a different approach entirely. That recognition comes from repetition, not instruction. What works during the day, taking time, confirming details, coordinating through conversation, becomes a liability after dark. Night crews operate inside a different set of constraints. Their decisions reflect that reality. These patterns make sense only from inside the work.